Hello students, welcome back to Mr. Labour's computing classes. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in this lesson here is learning another type of loop that we for coding. Now, previously in our last lesson we learned what was called the for loop. Okay, and the thing with the for loop is that it's very good for counting, so it'll count from any amount of numbers, and it's a great loop to use if you know exactly how many times that you need to loop through that piece of code, whether it be 5 times, 50 or 500 times. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is we're going to be learning about the while loop. And the while loop is a really good loop to use if you don't actually know how many times that you're going to be counting, going through that loop. So what we'll do is I'll show you how it works, and then you'll see how useful it can be and in what sort of situation that we would use that type of loop. Okay, so what we'll do is we will start with getting Excel open, because we're going to be using VBA, and we'll just start with a blank workbook. Make sure that your developer tab is showing up there, and in fact I will go straight there, and we will start by inserting an ActiveX control button here. So put it on our page and then double click that button, and that takes us through to our Visual Basic for Applications coding window. So what we'll do is we'll put that on one side of the screen, and we'll have that on the other side of the screen. I'm going to get rid of this. You may have more room than me, so you may not need to. And I'm just going to bring that code button, that line down. And remember our first line of code, this line here, it just says when I click the button. So what I've done is I've put a comment in there just to remind us that this next line here means when I click the button, and here's the button here, of course. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit, so anything that we write in here will happen when we click this button. Okay, so we'll go back to our development, and we'll uncheck the design mode, and that gets rid of the handles around the button. It means that when we click the button like that, anything in here will run, and no, we haven't got anything in there, so nothing's happened. Okay, so I'm going to show you the while loop. So I guess the best thing is to actually write it out and see what happens. So it starts with while, and then what happens in here, whoops, not there, hang on, in whatever we type in here, it will run a test. And then if the test passes, it will go into this loop, which is going to be on the following lines until you get to the while end, which is spelled W-E-N-D, and then it's going to jump out of the loop. Okay, so this is going to be the loop in here. Right, so for example, if we said if 1 is less than 2, the computer is going to test that, and the answer is going to be true. So because the answer is true, it will jump into here, and it will run whatever is in here. So just so that we can see that happening, I'm going to write message box and put a string in there, which is going to be the words hello. Now, I warn you now, don't click that button, because this will run endlessly and it's not going to stop, so your computer is going to crash. just to make sure that we can slow this down, what we'll do is we'll stop the code by clicking in there in the gutter area there, and that will allow us to fix it up. Okay, so we'll click the button, and the first line of code is about to run, and it says while 1 is less than 2, and it's going to test that, and the answer is going to be true, so therefore it's going to go onto this line here and run this line here. So if I push F8, it will now run this line, and I push F8, and there we go, it's put a message box up and it says hello, and now I can go OK, and it comes down to this line, and this is going to tell the computer that this is the end of the loop. So at this stage it will go back up to here, so we'll go F8, and it will now test this again, and of course it hasn't changed, so it's going to go back into the loop, and it will run this line of code and put another message box up, and that will just go on forever and ever and never stop, because this is never changing. However, if I was to now change and make it 3 is less than 2, okay, so now we push F8, and it's about to test this, is 3 less than 2, and the answer is going to be false, so therefore it's going to jump out of this loop and it will come straight down to here. So let's do that, and there you go, it's now down to there, and it's finished the loop, and the whole program's finished. Okay, so that is how a while loop works, and but now we need to make it actually a little bit more useful. So what we'll do is, in front of this here, we'll use a variable, and we'll just call it x, and we're going to make x equal 1, okay, and then we're going to test that x is less than 2, and if it is, it's going to show our message box, and it will just keep doing that, and of course x is not going to change, so it just as before, it's going to keep going around and around in our while loop, which once again is pointless, so we need to fix that up. So what we'll do is we will increment x, and we'll make x equal whatever x is plus 1. Okay, so therefore every time it goes around, x is going to be 1 is going to be added to x. So let's click that and see it all working. So here we go, it tested it, x is 1, and is it less than 2? Well, yes, it is less than 2, so therefore it's going to show a message box, and we go OK. Now it's going to say x to equal x. Now x is 1 plus another 1, so then x will now be 2, and that's good. So the end of our loop, so this tells it to shoot back up here, and we're now going to test again. Is x less than 2? The answer is no, x is not less than 2, so therefore it'll come down here out of the loop, and that's the end of it. So there we go, and if I was to click that, you will see that it will show our message box once, and then it will jump out. And if I was to say put that up to 4, then it will show it 3 times in that case. Okay, so that's very similar to the for loop. All we've done is just count and until we got to where this was false. And once again, we haven't really achieved anything. We could have just used the for loop. So let's make it a little bit more useful, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to have a list of names up here. So we'll have John, Jack, and we'll have Paul. Okay? And what we're going to do now is we're going to use another variable, and we'll call it first name, and we're going to say that equals, we're going to make it John, so that's going to be A1. So we're going to need range, and we can go A. Now, we could just put A1, but what I'm going to do is, because X here is 1, I'm going to join that up with X, and so that'll say the range A1 is going to become into this variable here. So let's just run that. I'll put a stop. I'll put a stop there, and we'll just see that working. So X at the moment is empty, and now it's 1. Our variable F name, or first name, is empty, but we're going to put the range A and 1 into our variable. So F name, first name, is now John. And what we're going to say is we're going to test now before we do that, I'm going to show you a function that we haven't yet used, and so I'm just going to drop this down like that. Now we're going to be using what is called the length function, and what length does is it tests the length of anything that you put into it. So we're going to put F name into it, and it will tell us the length. Now the length is 4 characters. You can see there it says John, which is 4 characters. So the length, it's going to tell us it's 4. So just to put that on the screen, what we'll do is we'll go message box, and we're going to use a message box to tell us the length of the first name, and you can see the answers telling us there it's 4. But to prove it, I will go F8 and show that the answer there is 4. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use that here, the length. We're going to test the length of that, and say while the length is, providing it's got a name in it, it's going to be greater than 0. So providing the length of that variable is greater than 0, then go into the loop. So if I click down here, we'll test that, and that should end up being true. So we now go into the loop, and it says hello. So that's cool. Now we don't want X. Well, we do actually. We're going to leave that because that increments that. But what we need to do also is we need to change this first name to now be Jack, which is going to be A2. Now, this X is being incremented, so we can go equals range. We're still on the A column, and this time we're going to use X because we want to drop down number 2. So there we go. So here we go. At the moment X is 1, and now X is 2. At the moment F name, first name, is John, and now first name is Jack. So while end, we're going back to the top of our while, and we're back up here. Now we're going to test that the first name, and it says it's 5, which is greater than 0, and so the answer is true. So we go back into our loop, and it says hello, that's cool, and then we increment our x, so x is 3. We change our first name to now be Paul. We go up here, we go back, we test again, and the answer is true. We go hello, so there we are, there's our hello. We increment the x, oops, I pushed it twice, and this time x is now 4, and you can see A4 is empty, so first name is empty. So we go the end of our loop and back up and ready to test. Now, the length of our first name, you can see the answer is 0. 0 is not greater than 0, so this here is false, and it will now exit out of our loop. So there we go, it's exited out and it's finished. So that's a good practical example of how the while loop works. And just to change things around here and make it a little bit more obvious, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out there, and we'll change it in here so that now the message box, oh no, we don't want that, is going to show the person's name each time. Okay, so if I click here, I'm going to take that out, and you can see it says John, Jack, Paul, and now it will finish. Okay, and this is and the real benefits of this while loop is going to be, if I add somebody else, like let's put Sally, that's all I need to do, and now it will go through all of those until it gets to an empty one, and then the loop will finish. So John, Jack, Sally, no, Paul, Sally, and finish. And then we could add on another one and click John, Jack, Paul, Sally, Susan, and finish. And so that's how we can use a while loop really usefully, rather than a for loop, which would be just a set count. It might be 3 or 4 or 5. Okay, so there we go, that's it. That's how we use a while loop. And our next lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to use that in a bigger way and make it useful for changing a whole heap of names. So we'll see you guys in the next lesson, and I hope that you have understood the difference between a for loop and a while loop.